Love has this peculiar way of appearing right where the ego had carefully posted a do not disturb sign. We think we are hunting for love in holy places, and then it ambushes us in the checkout line when we are tired, cranky, and out of bananas. The problem, of course, is not that love does not visit us. It is that we are usually too busy being somebody to notice it knocking on the back door. Suffering is often just love in disguise, slowly dismantling the walls we built to keep it out. The guru, the lover, the stranger, the enemy, each walks onto the stage of our life to hand us the next clue about who we really are. When we start to witness instead of star in our own drama, we find that even the most inconvenient people are secretly on our side. Service reveals its quiet secret. You think you are helping them, and you discover it is love using them to help you wake up. In activism and in argument, in protests and in family dinners, love whispers, act fully, but do not make anyone the enemy, not even yourself. Little by little, the identity we polished for so long loosens its grip, and we find ourselves resting as the space in which all these wild characters appear. And in the most ordinary moment, on a bus, at a bedside, in a lonely kitchen, love finally stops being an event and becomes the very atmosphere we are breathing together. The funny thing about love is that if you drew up a sensible schedule for it with a tidy calendar and clear appointments, it would probably never show up. It does not seem to be very obedient that way. It arrives when we are late for work, when our heart has just been broken, when our socks do not match and our hair is not washed, and we are absolutely certain that God has forgotten our address. It comes to the places in us we would rather hide, and to the people we were sure were not on the guest list for our spiritual life. We like to imagine love as this beautiful, serene guest that will knock on the door when we have cleaned the house of the mind, when the altar is dusted, the incense lit, our mantra practiced, and our anger nicely tucked away in the closet. But love is much more mischievous than that. It will show up as the crying baby on the airplane, as the neighbor whose dog uses your lawn as a spiritual toilet, as the one politician you are certain is the incarnation of all darkness on earth. It is as if the universe keeps saying, "Are you sure you only want love when it is convenient, dear one? Or are you ready to meet me everywhere?" We start our journey thinking love is a feeling. We want that warm, glowing, heart-expanding moment, the violins, the stars, the sunset. And we get those. They are lovely. But then life gives us other moments, the diagnosis, the divorce papers, the protest line, the lonely stretch at 3 a.m. when the ceiling becomes our closest confidant. Those do not feel like love in the Hallmark sense. They feel messy, painful, inconvenient. And yet if we listen quietly, if we just soften our grip on who we think we are, there is something in those moments too, a hand on the small of the back, guiding us further in. In the beginning, we are very busy being somebody. That somebody has a curriculum vitae, where they went to school, what they believe, whom they vote for, which foods they think are spiritual, how they meditate, and how they would never, ever behave. The ego is like a very earnest interior decorator, arranging all the furniture of identity just so, and then love arrives like a herd of elephants running through the living room. It knocks over our careful beliefs, sits on our favorite sofa, and laughs. And the ego says, "This is entirely inappropriate. I did not invite this chaos." I remember sitting once with a group of seekers in a small room. The air was thick with incense and expectation. Everyone wanted to be uplifted, transformed, enlightened, preferably by lunchtime. A young man stood up and said, "I just want to live in love all the time." It was such a beautiful sentiment. And at the same moment, through the open window came the sound of an argument from the street below. Horns honking, someone shouting, a child crying. The young man frowned, irritated that his aspiration had been interrupted by such unspiritual noise. Do you see the joke? The aspiration was noble, but it was still selective. I want love, but only in this form, at this volume, with this soundtrack, in this kind of room. Life, meanwhile, was saying, "Here I am, as an argument, as hunger. as frustration, as a crying child. Do you recognize me in this costume? We often think there are places where love is and places where love isn't. The meditation hall is love's address. The traffic jam is not. The beloved's eyes are love's address. The eyes of the person who betrayed us are not. Yet as we start to quiet down a little, as we begin to practice being the witness rather than the star, we notice something subtle. We notice that the same awareness that is present when we feel soft and open is also present in the moments when we feel tight and closed. The awareness does not come and go. It watches the coming and going. It watches the parade, joy, sorrow, attraction, aversion, tenderness, irritation. Love begins to shift from a particular weather pattern to the sky itself. The ego does not like this shift. The ego wants guarantees. It wants love to be reliable, controllable, deserved. It wants love as a reward for being good, for meditating properly, for not getting angry. It wants a contract. If I behave and think the right thoughts and eat the right foods, will you, love, please show up on time and stay? But the heart is in a different business. The heart is in the business of breaking open. It knows that some of the greatest openings come through the front door labeled loss or failure or embarrassment. The heart knows that when we are stripped of our favorite masks, something vast and tender can finally breathe. There is a story I love of a man traveling all the way to India to meet a guru. He had read all the books, done all the workshops, carried his neurotic luggage across continents. He arrived at the ashram thinking, at last, now I will find a place where everyone is loving, wise, and kind, and I can relax. You know this fantasy, perhaps. He steps into the ashram kitchen and immediately begins to judge the way the rice is cooked, the way the other devotees chant off key, the way one man pushes to the front of the line. His Western mind, trained to compare and evaluate, is very busy. At some point, the guru, wrapped in his blanket, looks at him with innocent eyes and says, "So much work to come here. Why not just love the one you are with?" That one sentence cuts through years of spiritual tourism, because love does not begin when the scenery changes. Love begins where you are, with the one in front of you, with the one inside you, with the parts you like and the parts you do not yet like. If you cannot love the person next to you in the grocery store when they bump your cart, what do you imagine you will do in some celestial realm? Complain about the harp music? Life keeps handing us people who do not fit our script. They are too loud, too quiet, too needy, too distant, too conservative, too radical. And every time we tighten around them, we are invited to notice, here is another chance. Here is love arriving in an inconvenient outfit. The personality may not like them. The soul bows. Because at the level of soul, everyone is doing us a favor. They are playing their role, pressing our buttons, shaking our certainties, not to torture us, but to show us where we are still attached, still defended, still insisting, I will love here, but not there. Suffering in that sense is often a form of grace in disguise. I do not say this glibly. Life can hurt. Bodies get sick. Relationships end. Societies behave in ways that break the heart. There is no use denying the pain. Denial only tightens it. But if, in the midst of the pain, there is even a small willingness to look, to feel, to open, something remarkable happens. The pain becomes a doorway. It is as if love says, since I cannot get your attention, in you are busy and successful and praised, I will knock a little louder. I will come to you as heartbreak, as failure, as confusion. Will you let me in then? I have met people in the depth of their grief whose hearts were shining. Not because they enjoyed their loss, no one enjoys that, but because something essential had broken open. The grief had dissolved a layer of pretense. They no longer had the energy to maintain their old image. They were raw, real, undefended. And in that rawness there was a kind of luminous tenderness. It is as if suffering had quietly taken them by the hand and led them out of the city of their ideas into a vast field where only the wind of presence was blowing. You and I usually try to bargain with suffering. All right, I will tolerate this, but only if you promise me a spiritual prize afterward. We want to turn it into a transaction. I will endure this illness if it makes me wiser. I will accept this betrayal if it brings my true soulmate. It is understandable. The ego is trying to make sense of something that feels senseless. But love is not a merchant. It is not trading pain for wisdom. Rather, it is present in the pain, waiting patiently for us to turn toward it instead of away. When we start to cultivate the witness, the simple awareness that sees without judging, we begin to notice that suffering is a movement in the mind and body arising in a much larger space. That space is not harmed by the movement. You can feel grief tearing through your chest like a storm, and yet there is also a quiet presence that notices the tears. That presence is not numb, it is infinitely compassionate. It holds the crying child of your heart with such gentleness. When you rest as that presence, even briefly, the suffering is no longer an enemy. It is a wave moving through the ocean of what you are. This shifts the way we meet other people's pain as well. When you know your own sorrow, you do not rush to fix everyone. You do not stand above them dispensing spiritual advice like pills. Instead, you sit beside them in the mud and say, yes, it hurts, and I am here. Love in inconvenient places often looks like that. Not glamorous, not triumphant, just sitting awake with someone in the dark. In a hospital room. On a curb at midnight. On the other end of a shaky phone call. You discover that your presence is the medicine. We like to imagine that the guru will appear with trumpets and clear instructions. Sometimes the guru appears as a small, round man in a blanket who throws fruit and laughs. Sometimes the guru appears as a child who will not stop asking why until your mind gives up. Sometimes the guru appears as the person whose political views make your blood boil. And the secret is that all of them are doing the same job. They are reflecting you back to yourself. They are showing you where you are still hooked. You may ask, why do some people have a guru and others do not? One answer offered with a smile is bad luck. Because when you have a guru, you no longer get away with your own game. You think you are dedicated and sincere, and the guru keeps slip-ins. G on your banana peels of self-deception. You want to be holy, and the guru insists on you being honest. You want to be special, and the guru points out that everyone is the self. It can be very inconvenient. I have heard stories where a devotee would come to the guru full of devotion, tears streaming down, saying, I love you so much, I would do anything for you. And the guru would say, go home and love your husband, go home and love your wife, go home and take care of your children. The devotee's face would fall. They were hoping to be given a mantra, a special practice, a new identity. Instead, they were sent back to the very relationships they felt trapped in. The guru was saying, do you think love is only here in this temple? Look again. The inconvenient places are often the most fertile ground. This is the essence of karma yoga, the path of action. You act, you serve, you love, not because you have perfected your personality, but as a way to work with it. You go to the soup kitchen, you sit with the dying, you help at the shelter. At first you think, I am such a good person doing all of this. And then you notice that service is showing you yourself. You see your impatience, your subtle arrogance, your desire to be admired. Service becomes a mirror. If you are willing to keep looking without turning away, the mirror starts to melt the actor. Little by little it stops being, I am serving those people, and becomes, love is serving itself through these hands. I once stood at a demonstration against nuclear weapons. It was one of those gatherings where the air vibrated with both hope and anger. People were shouting slogans, holding signs, trying to awaken the conscience of a nation. Beside me was a man whose voice was hoarse from yelling. He turned to me, eyes blazing, and said, those people are monsters. I felt the sincerity of his concern for the planet, and I also felt the subtle poison of that word. Monsters. The mind loves to divide, us and them, good and evil, the righteous and the sinners. As we talked, it became clear that he was carrying a heavy burden. He felt responsible for saving the world. He could not rest because the world was not yet as he thought it should be. Have you felt that? You watch the news, you see injustice, you see suffering, and something in you wants to rise up, to act. That impulse is beautiful. But if you add hatred, you are pouring gasoline on the very fire you wish to extinguish. The art, then, is to act without creating an enemy, to stand against injustice and still see the humanity of those who perpetuate it. How do we do that? Not by concept, but by practice. When you stand in a line of protesters and you breathe, you feel your feet on the ground, you sense the beating hearts around you, something shifts. You realize that the policeman holding the baton also has a mother, also has fears and dreams. You realize that the corporate executive you demonize is, in some deep way, also seeking safety, also confused about what will bring lasting fulfillment. This does not excuse harmful actions, but it changes the way you meet them. You act to relieve suffering, but you do not feed the story of us against them. You let your activism be a form of love instead of another battleground for ego. At the level of personality, this feels impossible. The personality thrives on opposition. It feels alive when it has a righteous battle. It loves its indignation. But at the level of soul, you are looking at a different picture. You see a vast play of beings, all learning, all stumbling, all forgetting and remembering. Some play the role of oppressor, some of victim, some of rescuer, and the roles change over lifetimes. When you tune into that larger view, your heart softens. You can hold firm boundaries, say no to harm, and yet inwardly you bow. In intimate relationships, the same paradox appears. You want love, you want connection, but when the other person fails to live up to your script, you withdraw. You say, when you are the way I want you to be, I will open my heart. The other has their own script, two scripts meeting, both demanding the lead role. It is a wonder any relationship survives more than a week. And yet, in the middle of the arguments about dishes and finances and unmet needs, there are moments. A hand reaching for another in the dark, a shared laugh when the power goes out, tears that finally tell the truth after months of pretense. Love slips through the cracks of our defenses. If you are willing to use your relationships as spiritual practice, they become sacred laboratories. You notice the moment your chest hardens, the instant resentment appears. Instead of immediately blaming the other, you pause, you breathe, you see the storyline. They never listen, I am not respected, I am always the one who bends. You let the storyline float in awareness. You feel the hurt underneath. And then maybe you take a risk. You speak from the tender place instead of the defensive place. Or you choose silence that is not withdrawal, but spaciousness. These small shifts are huge. They are love learning to bloom in the messy soil of two personalities. Often people say, I cannot open my heart because I have been hurt. As if the hurt is a permanent scar closing the door. But if you look carefully, the hurt itself is a form of openness. You were vulnerable. You loved. You were betrayed or disappointed. The wound is proof that your heart was willing. Instead of hardening around the wound, you can bring awareness there like a gentle hand. You can whisper inwardly, yes, that was painful. Yes, I am afraid, and I am not going to abandon you, dear heart. That inner kindness is love, right there in the place you thought was ruined. The dance of identity plays out through all of this. For most of our life, we are identified with the personality, our opinions, our history, our preferences. We think that is who we are. But as we deepen in practice, through meditation, prayer, service, contemplation, we begin to suspect that we are something more spacious. There are moments when we are simply here, not anxious about the past or future, not busy defending or explaining, just present. Perhaps watching a sunset or sitting with a dying friend or listening to music that dissolves the boundaries. In those moments, the usual me recedes. There is only awareness, only presence. From that vantage point, you can look back at your personality and smile. Ah, there you are, dear neurosis. There you are, old fear. There you are, pride, trying on your costumes again. The personality does not disappear. It just becomes lighter. Instead of being the captain of the ship, it becomes one of the crew. You are no longer completely at its mercy. You can choose. You can say, "Thank you for your service, old pattern, but I am going to listen to a deeper wisdom this time." This is where the paradox of being and doing becomes more subtle. On the surface, you are still doing. Going to work, raising children, caring for the sick, writing letters to politicians, planting gardens. But inwardly, you rest as being. The doing arises out of being and then returns to it. You are not acting from anxiety or compulsion as much. You are acting from a quieter place. The same activity, washing dishes, teaching a class, sitting in a meeting, can feel completely different when it is infused with presence. Love does not need fanfare. It can come in the form of really listening to someone for 5 minutes without planning your reply. You may wonder, but how do I live this way in a world that is so fast, so demanding, so noisy? Slowly, gently. You do not have to move to a cave. The world itself is your ashram. Each moment is a bell calling you back. Standing in the supermarket line, you can notice the sensation of your feet on the floor. You can look at the faces around you and silently bless them. May you be safe. May you be happy. You can feel the small invisible threads that connect you. All of you needing food, all of you carrying your particular burdens, all of you loved by a mystery you cannot name. On a crowded bus or subway, instead of contracting at the press of bodies, you can experiment. What happens if you imagine that everyone here is family, that you have known each one for lifetimes? The old woman clutching her bag, the teenager with the loud music, the tired man in a wrinkled suit. Each one is you in another costume. You do not have to force a feeling, just hold the idea lightly. You might find that your chest softens, that your breath deepens. This is love blooming in a very inconvenient place, public transportation. Over time, the line between convenient and inconvenient places begins to blur. The meditation cushion and the traffic jam, the altar and the office, the sacred chant and the crying baby, they all become part of one tapestry. You discover that there is no place where love is not possible. There are only places where you forget to look. The ego will continue to have its preferences. It will still prefer the soft lighting and the spiritual music. That is all right. You do not have to destroy the personality. You just do not have to be hypnotized by it. The guru, in whatever form they come to you, will keep nudging you toward this recognition. Perhaps through a dream, perhaps through a book that falls off the shelf at the right moment, perhaps through a stranger's kindness. As just when you had given up on humanity, the guru's function is not to make you dependent, but to point you back to your own heart again and again until you finally trust it. At the deepest level, guru, God, and self are not three. They are one light appearing in different mirrors. So we sit together, you and I, in this strange classroom called life. The lessons are not always clearly labeled. The timetable is irregular. The homework appears as your neighbor at the door, your body aging, your job changing, your feelings rising and falling. And love, we can call it grace or God or simply presence, keeps slipping little notes under the door. Look here, see me here, even here. It is patient. It does not mind how many times we forget. It trusts that eventually, in some lifetime, on some morning, when the light hits the kitchen table just so, we will stop and breathe and remember. And perhaps that remembering will not be dramatic. No angels, no fireworks, just a quiet clarity. I am not separate from this. I am not separate from you. This pain, this joy, this confusion, this beauty, all of it is moving within something vast and loving. Perhaps you will be stirring your tea or helping a child with homework or sitting in a waiting room. Ordinary moments become thresholds. The heart, surprised, opens. Tears come for no particular reason. You are home without having gone anywhere. From that place, Love is no longer something you seek or give or receive as an object. It is the atmosphere you move in. You still play your roles, parent, friend, activist, artist, citizen, but you know they are roles. You wear them lightly. When someone judges you, you feel the sting. And you also see the confusion underneath their judgment. When someone loves you, you enjoy it. And you also know that what they love is the same light that lives in them. The dance becomes sweeter, less desperate. You can laugh at your own seriousness. If you listen closely now, you might notice that something in you is already resting. Beneath the thoughts that say, I must do better, I must become more spiritual, I must fix this, there is a simple presence. It is here whether you meditate or not, whether you succeed or fail, whether you feel loving or irritated. It is like the space in this room, holding the furniture, the people, the words, without effort. That presence is what you truly are. Love is its fragrance. So let us sit just as we are, with our neuroses, our doubts, our hopes, our tender hearts. Let us not wait for the perfect conditions. The most inconvenient places are already here, the ache in your chest, the unfinished conversation, the worry about tomorrow. You do not have to solve them all right now. Just soften a little around them. Breathe in and out. Feel the weight of your body on the chair, the contact of your feet with the floor. Notice that you are being held, even now, by something you did not create. And as you breathe, perhaps you can allow this simple possibility to arise, that love has never actually been absent, that it has been standing patiently in the doorway of each moment, whether you opened or closed. Thea. And every person you meet is carrying a secret message for you. Remember what you are. Some of them deliver the message gently, with smiles and kindness. Some deliver it clumsily, with harsh words and broken promises. The message is the same. When you are ready, when you are weary enough of your own struggle, you may find yourself whispering, all right, I surrender. I will look for you everywhere, even where it hurts, even where it is not convenient. And love, which has been waiting without judgment, will smile and say, welcome home, you never left.